Can they mute?
Welcome, welcome. My name is Solange Ellen, and I'm recording this little informational video from Nadgeree Nation, Sandy Creek, to talk about law and jurisdiction of law, specifically as it relates to child protection is what we're talking about today with Donna Markwell, and really helping parents to just get a comprehension of the difference between the fraudulent system of corporate law and commercial law, which is all about contracts and money and control, and the real law, the living law, divine and natural law, that actually belongs to humanity as gifted to us by our divine creator and by our living Mother Earth. So the real law is really written into us, into our hearts and into our conscience as living men and living women of the living soil. So that's the true law, and that's the true jurisdiction. And that jurisdiction to law here in the sovereign First Nations was never ever ceded. There was never a deal made between the original sovereigns and this invading criminal slave system. So that has come in and made false claims and been committing genocide here in the sovereign First Nations for 233 years. And this is the, critical piece of information that all living men and living women need to become conscious of to comprehend the difference between the real law of we the living men and living women, flesh and blood with soulful substance of the living land, and then this fraudulent system of these corporations, which are dead entities made up on paper or on the computer, just fraudulent entities that operate for profit and power and control over people. It's actually about energy harvesting, sucking the life out of their victims.
That's right,
living men and living women and our children. And then how do we use this information when we're actually dealing with their false claims against us and our children? So if you want to share a bit of how you did that, Donna.
Yeah, well, the first thing I did, I called it out for what it was, missing persons. We put a missing persons report in to Facebook, funnily enough, just to get the word out there, because their dead entity corporation is on the same team if you put the missing person reporting to them. So that's the first thing I did, called Takara out as a missing person, and I always called it for what it was. Even in all the DCP meetings and on the phone and stuff, I told them and reminded them that they had kidnapped Takara and they need to return her immediately. I was literally like a broken record. You've kidnapped her, you're holding her hostage, she wants to come back, we want her back, you're stopping her, you have kidnapped her, you are holding her hostage, broken record, return Takara now. I made a Facebook page, return Takara now. I turned the common law court YouTube page into return Takara now. It was just return Takara now. I instructed the judge the magistrate when I represented myself to return Takara now. That's all you need to do. When I went into the courts, I represented myself. I'd put paperwork in, affidavits, peace treaty, everything I could get my hands on, press releases, naming names, calling them out. We'd already done a grand jury on the 19th of November because I went to executiveorders.life and I put Takara in as being human trafficked. There's a human traffic section there. You can please go in and write your children into the human traffic section. And I did, as you know, lots of social media stuff. So you can literally follow my case all the way through from beginning to end on Return Takara on Telegram if you wanted to see every breakdown of everything that I did. So it was very transparent, and it was out of complete desperation and absolutely surrendered to the divine. I had no idea what I was doing each day. We'd wake up and go, what are we doing, Solly? And we wouldn't know. We were completely guided by the divine. And we used David Walter's work where we called them out for being corporations. We used everything that we knew. We used it. So it was a matter of, even though they were telling me not to use that language, was the truth. So really, it was the truth. I just kept saying the truth to them, and they weren't coping. They couldn't return my calls. They couldn't speak to me for, they tried to pretend that they felt threatened by Sandy and I, and so we exposed their little games. Like I said at one stage, I said, Kelly, just sit down. We know that game where you pretend to be all threatened and all victimized because, you know, we're just being absolutely normal in a meeting. So they will try their little tricks on you. And we held, see, they're in the smaller legislation circle and we're in the bigger jurisdiction circle. If you go on to executiveorders.life, it's got lots of information there about how they're in a little legislation, but we're in the bigger jurisdiction. So we have jurisdiction over them and around them because, again, we know we're under the divine, being God, as opposed to their crown being the Commonwealth crown. I'm not talking about that crown at all. That crown's gone. That crown's fraudulent, and that crown is the trespassing crown. So throw that crown out the window. We're talking the divine crown and knowing what nation you're on. I was on Kaurna Nation, so I acknowledged that I was standing on Kaurna Nation. I had the Aboriginal liaison officer standing next to me. So, you know, he was the only one that was allowed to come in to the youth court. But again, I represented myself in court. And I know that might be scary for the people who are frightened, who have had trauma of going through these courts, because they are very traumatic. But, you know, everyone I've seen use lawyers has had their children taken for many years. So how much do you love your children? People say, oh, we do anything for them. Well, will you? Will you? It was really scary. I had to really get right with God, prayed with, you know, really had to seek God and purity with all my heart and all my soul, and just throw myself at the foot of the cross on a daily basis in complete surrender to whatever that day may have held. I had a lot of baths and used a lot of water. Otherwise, I just felt like I couldn't cope either. So it was really weird. You know, want to call it the water therapy or the angel of water. I found that in my grief and trauma, that helped a lot. And I would sing a lot. I would keep singing. I kept singing to God and praying and singing my new reality in and praying through song to the divine. I used that one a lot, and threw myself absolutely into it 100%. And I know it made me use every part of my strength and energy and surrender, and then strength and energy and no, I'm not frightened, even though I felt like sometimes I was just going to vomit from fear standing in those satanic courts. God's strength in me was stronger than them.
And you made it clear about the financial interest the judge and the DCP had in your child, in keeping your child?
Yeah, I made that clear in my affidavits. I made that clear verbally. I made that clear in DCP meetings, that they had a conflict of interest, that they had financial profit from. How can they have an impartial judgment when they have financial profit from this? And like I said in other meetings, it's only you can say that as a living man or living woman. You have highest jurisdiction in that court because they're all dead entities. So you have highest jurisdiction in that court, and you tell them what you need them to do. And
you instructed the clerk 3 times?
I instructed the clerk to make a note of things that I was telling the judge. So I instructed the clerk on the first one to, you make sure that you write down that I oppose this adjournment. Have you written it down? Yes, you have. Great. And I instructed the clerk on the second time that I made sure I said it over 3 times of my standing and my jurisdiction, that I have superior jurisdiction in this court. And Magistrate Adair, I'm surprised to actually find you here, because the Australian grand jury has stood you down as incompetent and not following rule of law. And then, you know, and another time I at the beginning of that case, I actually said the only thing you'll be needing to do today is write orders to have Takara returned to me immediately. And so that's when a few days later they call mum and dad to come down. But there's been no change of custody. There was nothing signed. She's still completely in my custody. There was like I said, I had to give them permission for mum and dad to fly back with her, and we've never heard of an outcome like this before. So if I was any other parent, I'd be really, really, really studying what I did.
And Donna, the bloodline, you know, it's a bit like what the ancients say, know thyself. We have to know our standing and know that the bloodline is the highest jurisdiction, and their standing is way beneath we the people and our bloodline. We're the ones.
Yeah, it's that we're living. It's that we are living, breathing men and women, and that they are only a dead entity corporation. It's literally like going against McDonald's or Bunnings or you know, Kmart. They're a corporation.
Just made to look very pretty and look like they've got authority when they actually have no authority at all.
And then we've got the group psychosis of all of Australia and all of the world following on from that. You know, so we're dealing with a lot of cognitive dissonance. We're dealing with, you know, a mass delusion who think that the people in Parliament and the government have our best interest at heart. But, you know, as you know, when you just do even a fraction of study, that's not the case. So
and the mass
I don't
delusion
know why.
the mass delusion is that they're taking children that actually need to be taken, whereas the ones that actually need to be taken are very often left, and the healthy ones are the ones that are taken.
Yeah, the ones from high functioning families, they can be taken. And the problem that we've got now is that people, for some reason, all of a sudden think that the dead entity corporation called the Australian Corporation, that try to call themselves the Australian government, somehow have our best interest at heart and just want to make sure we're all safe and all injected and, oh, we all really care all of a sudden. You know, it's amazing that we're falling for it, or they're falling for it again. But, you know, it looks like we might even have to have some kind of, you know, a place where the unvaccinated can go, because they're getting quite few and far between. So if I do get money, that would be my plan. Buy property and have all you poor unvaccinated people there so that we can grow stuff and try and get on and try and keep living, because it could well be the unvaccinated that end up going in and helping the poor, sick, vaccinated people. So that's what we're finding in Melbourne.
Making safe birthing embassies, so that we have places for, you know, natural mums to have their natural babies without any interference from this satanic slave system with all its false claims.
Yeah, that's what we need, really. And we know Mama Mel's been calling for that for a while, so we'll do our best. And if I get any payout from this, mate, that's where it'll be going.
Thanks, Donna. That was excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch a little bit on...
Have we stopped recording, or do you want to keep recording?
No, I just want to get a little bit in about the, you know, divine law. I think, you know, that's universal. So that's for everyone, everywhere. Natural law has to do with the specific land that we're on, you know, and where we are, and really acknowledging the First Nations land and the sovereignty, which is that the people of the land and the original sovereigns of the land have the real jurisdiction of law. And that's something that you were really strong in, Donna, you know, in covering all your bases with that. So you declared yourself party to People's Treaty, you planted your trees to be part of the People's Peace Alliance, you spoke to elders and engaged their support, and you acknowledged yours and Takara's own original lineage back to Eora Nation. And these are all really powerful spiritual truths that, when we are acknowledging them with the proper respect and honour and recognition, then we're actually in standing with the real law. You know, if we're missing that.
They did really freak out when they found out that we were from Eora Nation, and that my mother confirmed that. They went, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I know immediately they got on the phone to my mum and confirmed it and asked Takara, and you could tell they had some kind of panic attack around that as well. So,
yes, that's because the original people are incredibly powerful spiritual beings and very, very wise, and they have actually already negotiated, or not even negotiated, because they never surrendered, they never ceded their sovereignty. They have informed DCP of the kinship relationship, where the law is, if they are going to be stealing children, they must be placed in a kinship with the family. Must be. And they know that. The rest of us don't know that. The rest of us have got no clue what the real law is, because we're, you know, muppets that have been raised in the slave system for many generations, many before it even came here. So 233 years of the slave system here, but for the rest of the people that have been, you know, in other parts of the world, the indoctrination and the slave training goes back thousands of years, you know, thousands. So that's why it's so important for us to give our sovereign originals the proper respect and to learn to listen to them, because they've got so much wisdom, ancient earth wisdom, that the rest of us have forgotten. You know, we've forgotten it, they're still holding it. And when we come together, we the people, you know, to really compare notes and learn from each other and acknowledge the truth, we can dissolve this fraud like miraculous. Like really, we can get rid of it. So
yes, we can. And you know, we absolutely acknowledge what they're doing in Canberra now in front of the White Parliament House, and we support it completely. We are trapped in our own fake states with the fake borders at the moment. But, you know, we're trying to do our best to combat that as well. But we support you 100% with what you're doing down there in Canberra. Thank you, First Nation people and Aboriginal people.
Yeah, they're down there having served an eviction notice to the criminal corporations, and essentially just waiting for the people that have been loyal to this corporation to wake up to themselves and realise they need to come back to the land and the real law and be loyal to humanity and to the land and hand those keys over. Hand the keys over.
Or be arrested. They need to be arrested if they don't do that. You know, we can't keep these corporations going. That's what the monk called for, the great monk of Vinwash. I can't remember his name. And he's like, you know, they need arresting. They need to be arrested.
Yeah, that's for us.
The dead corporation need to be arrested. They can't keep hiding their pedophiles. We can't keep protecting them. The cat's out the bag. The Pandora's box is open. Sorry, guys. We all know. You know, we know. And you need to be arrested.
Yeah. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Team Humanity.